we have a one-on-one interview with a pro-life lawmaker, South Carolina State Representative Katie Arrington. Arrington shot to national attention in June after defeating U.S. Representative Mark Sanford in a primary for his seat. The very next week, Arrington was traveling to an event when her car collided with another vehicle going the wrong direction. Arrington suffered a fracture in her back, several broken ribs, and underwent major surgery to remove portions of her small intestine and colon. Today, she is recovering and back on the campaign trail as the Republican South Carolina candidate for Congress. South Carolina State Representative Katie Arrington joins us now from Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. Katie, thank you for your time.
Oh, no, thank you for having me.
First off, it's been less than 2 months since your accident. How are you doing?
I am doing remarkably well. God is incredibly good to me, and my friend Jackie, who was involved in the accident. I've been out of the hospital and back on the campaign trail for several weeks now. I'm down to just air casts on my feet, and Jackie's due to get released tomorrow into rehab care, so we are doing incredibly well. Thank you.
Unbelievable. And I read that you recently stated, if anyone does not believe in God, look at me. Katie, can you speak to us about the role of faith in your life, especially lately?
It's absolutely been the driving force since I can remember. When I was a little girl, I remember at 2 and 3 years old talking to my mom about heaven, and then the accident. God is great. And when you put the Lord first and Jesus Christ out there, He definitely protects. There is no reason other than divine intervention that Jackie nor myself survived that accident. Neither one of us had any facial trauma or neurological damage. We're 2 months out from the accident, and we're both 100%, our recovery will be 100%. If that does not restore your faith in God or make people realize that He does have those of us that are out there fighting hard, He is protecting us. So faith has always been a driving force, and more now.
That is a powerful witness. And Katie, now you are running with a pro-life agenda for Congress. Can you tell our viewers, why are you pro-life?
So my son, Christian, my firstborn son, was born with something called craniosynostosis. So while he was growing inside of me, his skull fused together. When he was born, his brain was being crushed by his own body. It never occurred to me or any other way. It was just, I remember when the doctors told me, and I slid down a wall, and I prayed to God to give me the strength to stand up, to face whatever I needed to face, but never angry or upset with God. Now, he went through a tremendous surgery. We were in the neonatal ICU for about 6 months. He was blind and deaf, and it took years of rehab, and he is completely normal now by the grace of God. But when I was pregnant with my second child, the doctors in the first trimester said, we can test for the same genetic abnormality. And I looked at them with just a complete loss at what they were saying. I said, absolutely not. Every baby, every life is a gift from God from the moment of conception. And I stand unwavering on that. I am extraordinarily pro-life and will fight for that in Congress.
Thank you for sharing that part of your family's story. And Katie, in South Carolina State Legislature, you worked to pass the Pain-Capable Unborn Child Protection Act, which prohibits abortion at 5 months. Why did you promote that piece of legislation?
Well, absolutely any abortion for me is murder, without a doubt. Myself and I will say Representative Lynn Bennett worked tirelessly on that bill. It just was so important to us. It's sad to think that in this day and time, people think that a baby at 5 months is something that can be dissected. It is absolutely an abomination of humanity, and we fought very hard on that. We also worked hard to defund abortions in the state of South Carolina. Sadly, we weren't successful in that. It got filibustered in the Senate, but as God is my witness, I will continue to fight for the unborn every day.
From South Carolina to here in Washington, D.C. now, hearings for Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh will begin September 4th. How significant, in your opinion, is Kavanaugh's confirmation to the Supreme Court, especially for the pro-life movement?
Oh, it's absolutely essential. I mean, we are finally getting the court back where we need it to be in the conservative voice that represents the vast majority of Americans. We need to respect human life. The sanctity of human life starts at conception, and we need to have Supreme Court justices that reaffirm that. We need to have another case brought up. We need to be able to turn back the time and get our country back to where we need it to be. And that is absolutely primary, and I think one of the main focal points of anybody going into Congress this year in the Republican and conservative movement is to support the nominees for Supreme Court and the conservative agenda and ensure that we get that taken care of.
And finally, Katie, if you do become a U.S. representative for the state of South Carolina, what would you do to advance the pro-life cause?
So absolutely the first thing is we should not, whatever the Supreme Court does, we should not assist in paying for abortions. Taxpayers should not be funding murder. No way under God's green earth should that be happening. I'll lead the cause for that. As a woman, as a mother of a child born with special needs, as someone who had the opportunity, I can change hearts and minds. I have a different viewpoint than most people on this issue. I've been posed the question. I absolutely denied it because it's fundamentally against who we are. I mean, every life is precious from the moment of conception, and I'll work hard on that issue to make sure that the least thing that we can do is ensure that tax dollars are not going to fund these abortions.
South Carolina State Representative Katie Arrington, who is South Carolina's Republican congressional candidate, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. You have a blessed day.
You as well. To continue the conversation, we're joined now by our two in-studio guests. Mallory Quigley is Vice President of Communications for the Susan B. Anthony List, and Alexandra DeSanctis is a staff writer for National Review and co-host of the Ordered Liberty podcast. Thank you both for being here.
Great to be here.
It's great to have you both. First off, Mallory, I want to get your reaction to what South Carolina State Representative Katie Arrington just shared with us.
Mm-hmm. Well, what an exciting woman leader she is. We're certainly looking forward to supporting her in the general election, and I'm just so excited to see that she gets into Congress. She spoke so movingly about the personal issues and her family, her son, driving her pro-life advocacy, and those are exactly the kind of voices that we need in Congress to advocate for pro-life laws.
Absolutely. Alexandra, you've been covering a lot of pro-life issues for National Review, including the nomination of Judge Brett Kavanaugh to the Supreme Court. I'm curious what you've been seeing from abortion advocates, how they've been reacting to his nomination.
I think their reaction has been just absolutely telling of the pro-abortion movement as a whole. They immediately were completely opposed to him, as if this was automatically Roe was going to be overturned if he was confirmed, and just very quickly falling back on these statistics that are inaccurate, claiming that most Americans support abortion rights and things, grasping at polls that really aren't actually conveying what Americans believe about abortion. And I think it just goes to show they're so desperate to preserve Roe because they don't actually think they have public opinion on their side.
And Kavanaugh could be the deciding vote in a possible future case that could overturn Roe v. Wade. With that being said, what misconceptions are we seeing out there about American attitudes towards Roe v. Wade? You kind of hit on it, Alexandra.
I think there are a lot of polls showing that most Americans don't, in fact, actually know that Roe has to do with abortion,
right.
which is remarkable. But I think that's going to be a huge deal in this confirmation hearing, and just the fact that most Americans think, for instance, if Roe is overturned, abortion would be illegal at the national level in every state, and that's not true. It would go back to the states, and a lot of Americans favor sort of abortion restrictions that are impossible under Roe right now.
Yeah. What's far more accurate about gauging Americans' views on abortion is when you are actually asking about real legislative proposals, like the 5-month abortion ban, like parental notification legislation. These things are very popular across a majority of Americans, and then really traditional Democrat voter groups, African Americans, Hispanics, young people. All these people support the Pain Capable Unborn Child Protection Act, just to name one piece of legislation. And that's what we're debating right now in Congress and across many states. So yeah, I think it's important to focus on real legislative proposals, not a court case that a lot of people don't really know what it means, to your point.
We spoke with Katie Arrington, who is running for Congress. It is for the U.S. House of Representatives. How do you see the Supreme Court issue impacting midterm elections, more specifically for senators, if at all?
Well, I just got back from a couple of swing states, and voters are very fired up about this. We're talking to voters in Missouri and Indiana, for example, who they know that their senator, was sent to Washington with a mandate to support the nominees that the president puts forward because they voted for the president in such large numbers with such a big margin. So I think that this is absolutely going to be an issue in a lot of Senate races, and maybe you can add more, Alexandra. I know you've been following the midterms.
I am. I'm covering a few of the swing state races for National Review, and I think a lot of voters, even if they don't really know Brett Kavanaugh, they don't see any huge red flags, nor should they really, from anything we've seen. And I think they see it as, we like Donald Trump, and this is his nominee, and we expect our senators to vote for him. And I think in places like Indiana, North Dakota, Missouri, voters are going to be very upset if senators vote against him for no good reason.
Mm-hmm. Alexandra DeSanctis and Mallory Quigley, thank you both for being here. This was a really insightful conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks, Kath.